John and I, like, we've known each other for a few years now, and it just like, and it's just I always like to talk about how we kind of like met because you live in Germany,
Yes,
but you're
that's
originally
correct.
from Cincinnati, and we had been
Yep.
talking to you to be on our live stream, and you said because of the time difference, it was really hard to make time for it. But you said for the holidays, I'm going to be in
Oh, yeah.
in the U.S. and we could probably do it then. And then I said okay, and then I said, and he said I'm going to be in Cincinnati because that's where I'm from. And then it turned out like that's where I live, and
Exactly.
Oh, like that's
like
how
I
you
said, it just
found out that he is from there and that's where he was going to be.
yes.
Exactly.
I see.
So instead of doing a live stream, on just like having them on like Discord or Skype or whatever, he just came over.
Exactly. I crashed your place. Mm-hmm. And I was at the old house.
That was at the old
Up in the
house.
attic with that crazy setup up there. It was
Yeah.
pretty wild.
That
Yeah.
I had to like carry all the way down. It took like 2 weeks to move out of that house.
And it was such a delay though between I had a visit in 2019 into 2020 and then the pandemic hit and I didn't
Yeah.
return until last summer, which sucked. But
Yeah.
we are hopefully planning to get over there again. I think this spring perhaps.
That's awesome.
So sometime in April. So
Oh, cool.
I do
So
look forward
like
to,
actually pretty
to visiting
soon.
the Natty once again. The nasty Natty.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
So a topic we've been talking about a lot on the show lately. I'm sure people out there will be thrilled that I'm bringing this up yet again. John, what's your stance on mini discs?
Oh, MiniDiscs freaking rule, dude. I love them. I love miniature optical media.
Yeah,
Like, I'm also a big fan of the UMD, which came later.
yeah,
But the MiniDiscs, I didn't use them that long, but I always found them fascinating. And a friend of mine got me into it back in like 2003, and I had a few of them. And then it was kind of when I lived in Tokyo for a year, 2005, they were actually still pretty popular there.
yeah.
And I used one for a while until that fall when I bought my first iPod, and I was just like, well, it was kind of over for the mini disc at that point because it was just easier, right? Like
for
to
sure.
throw MP3s on a device, but
Yeah.
the actual there is something really cool about mini discs, and I was amazed at how slim those players could get, right? Like they were very thin. You get a nice MD player with a inline remote on there, and it's a great looking little thing.
Yeah, I still have an old one, so it's quite a bit bigger. But what? Go ahead.
Oh, do either of you actually have the hi-fi mini disc players, like the full on component for the audio rack?
Well, I have
'Cause those-
that's we both do. In fact, Coury there has got he has a combo deck, so it's got
amazing.
a CD player and a mini disc in one component, which makes it easier, I suppose.
And it
dude,
has
you can
optical
just
in,
rip-
which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay,
Well-
that's cool as heck.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to bring up. I got so my player has an optical in on the back, and it also has a second optical in on the front, which is just convenient thing.
Oh, that's super
But-
handy.
But I was digging through my stuff, and when I first started my YouTube show, like the two things that I had to buy, well, three things. I had to buy a microphone because I didn't have a microphone. I had to buy a mixer to plug the microphone into, and then I had to buy some kind of USB audio interface. And I bought this little Behringer, like it's not even as big as a deck of cards, and just has like a USB cable hanging off of it. And I literally just used that to plug my mixer into my computer because my mixer doesn't have USB. And I haven't used that thing in like years, so it's just in like a box of stuff I don't use. And I went and dug it out the other day, and I didn't realize, because I never used it, that it has an optical out on it. And so I plugged it into my MacBook, and so now I can go on Tidal and I can stream like high-res music over the optical cable to my MiniDisc player, or to the recorder, to make discs. But it's funny because I was reading about, or not reading, but I was watching like some YouTube videos about various ways to get optical out of a computer that doesn't have an optical out. And so you end up watching like these videos that are made by these like kind of audiophile weirdos who it's like, okay, I have like 8 different devices that are like USB to optical, like digital to digital converters. And, you know, I watched this one video where it's like, oh, I got this thing that was only like $100, and then here's this other thing that's on the other end that's like $1,500. And he even admits right off the bat, you know, it's like, well, all of these are going to give you, you know, a bit perfect data stream off of your computer, you know, but, and then tries to tell you all these ways in which they're actually not the same. You know, well, this one gives you, you know, a better separation and a more expansive sound stage. And it's like, it's all such BS. You know, and it's it'll be noisier, you know, and so I just like plugged it into my computer and I turned the volume on my amp up like all the way. See, okay, is there any noise? There's no noise.
That's really interesting. So, I mean, for me, the way I did it was actually I had a portable mini disc player. I never had like an actual deck, right?
Yeah.
It was a slimline Sony model, and the way I managed to get audio into it was I had a big laptop back then, but also a desktop, but I actually had a USB sound blaster. So it was a sound blaster, something or other, that was a little box, an external box that would go into your PC with USB, but that actually had optical out on it in addition to the typical stereo and mini jack or whatever outputs. So I would run the optical out from that into this little, I think it was like a little dock or something. You could put the mini disc player in and you could record directly to that.
Yeah.
From there. So I was actually using it. That was the way I was getting MP3s and like other sound files onto it. So I was not doing the highest quality rips here, right? It was just like, well, I want to get music onto this thing.
Yeah.
And how can I do this? And that's the way I did it.
Well, I mean, looking back
worked.
on it, you know, it's analog audio on there, so it's not going to be perfect anyways.
Yeah, and it's
like
compressed.
a laser disc, man. It's
it's the audio equivalent of Laserdisc.
I mean, I think I mostly set it up the way I did because otherwise you're going from, like I said, you're going from digital to analog, back to digital, back to analog, and it's like this way.
I agree.
It's just cleaner. Like I know that you're not getting CD quality audio on a mini disc. Like I'm aware of that, but I just figure it's
ripping
simpler.
vinyl to it?
I haven't yet. I don't have my turntable is like downstairs and the mini disc thing's upstairs.
I'd like to hear what that sounds like in the end.
I could do it with my setup. It goes into it because mine has like
cool.
typically has analog audio in as well, and I actually set it up so that how am I getting audio? Like I can get audio. Well, I can send optical from my computer into it as well. So if I wanted to get like music from any game or anything like that, I would just like run it into my capture device and then like listen to the device and then record it into there.
Tell them about the Mister and using the CHUD files.
Oh, what's this?
Well, this is like a big thing that Troy and I talked about, where you can use like the CHD, like the compressed format that the Mister uses, and also like RetroPies use also. So you can rip like an audio CD as like a .bin and Q, and you can use that to create a CHD file. So if you just like did it with a music CD, you could like load it in there, and then you can play it through like the Sega CD core. You can load that disc into it and then just play the music if you wanted to.
Okay.
Yeah. And so you can use your Mister as like a music, jukebox if you wanted to. That'd be pretty cool. But no one's doing that.
Dude.
It's like so many layers to like essentially do something that is like normally really easy. that is easy to do like any other way. Like how can we make it more complicated? And it's funny to think about it like that.
Yeah, thinking of Mister, I recently completely rewired and set up an entire. Now I have like 4 different CRT setups throughout the house, and I just did this one up in a loft area with 2 EVM 20L4s, one in Tate mode for vertical action, and then the other one in the normal position. And I use a Laserdisc player to brace the one, and then a Nuon player to brace the other, so that they come out to be the same height. So I can have a shelf across the top. And I have the Mister up there. I actually use the Mister multi-system, which is a really nice package for that. Mm-hmm. And I also have a little table next to it where I can use arcade PCBs with the, so that's pretty useful. So yeah, I got a super gun set up over there and the power supply for that, and there's enough space you can just slide an arcade board in there and you're good to go. And then I'm using like DB15 extender cables with so far I've been mainly using Neo Geo CD game pads for the arcade setup because they're just
cool.
small, nice, comfortable, and they won't support everything. If you have stuff with the kick harness requirement, for instance, I do need to use another controller because Neo Geo doesn't have enough buttons. But I mostly use it for Sunset Riders right now, but I have a couple others. But the Mr. thing today, I finally got the X68000 core working on the 15 kilohertz EVMs. And it took a lot of like very custom work in the Mr.ini to pull it off, but it actually works flawlessly now.
Really?
Even the high-res stuff displays really well. And I think it really, from what I understand, this only works on some CRTs, and pro monitors fall into that spec. But I think it would probably not work on like a consumer set, given that they'd probably fall out of range. But
yeah,
I've been testing a bunch of stuff on there and just amazed by the sound quality coming out of that thing.
Oh yeah,
just the music in X68K games is unbelievable. And so yeah, that setup's been getting a lot of use out there, especially now that I got that work.
And it's nice to play games in like different places in the house if you have the ability to do that.
So yeah, that's an interesting thing. That's something I really focused on this year, was setting up little stations all over the house. And it sounds crazy. And if I think about it now, so I have one in the living room where I have a Pioneer Plasma, and I have an Xbox Series S down there, and another spot to swap in anything I need systems wise. And then in my main room, obviously, I have the OLED set up back there. I have my main BVM set up here. And then my PC set up here. And then on the wall next to my desk, since I moved my desk, I put in like a little wall desk there, like a shelf kind of thing. And I mounted that little OLED panel directly to the wall. So I can plug it in anything I need there. And I can also use a laptop on that little table. So it's an extra setup. And then I got the upstairs one in the loft. And then in the guest room, I have two CRTs back to back set up in there, and one of them I use as my composite station if I'm like hankering to play stuff in composite. It's like, oh, what's this like again, like PC Engine and Famicom and stuff like that, where it's like, it looks different, right? So I use a twin Famicom with AV out, and then just a regular old PC Engine, and it's crazy to have all these setups. But I mean, you guys know, I see what's behind you there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always envious of Chris's arcade setup back there. That's
pretty rad. I wish I had room for that.
So he has a Mistercade in it, and there's like something cool about playing
that's so
like,
awesome.
Like console games. Like the thing that made me think about it, like the first time, is like him showing or putting like NHL hockey on there. And it's like the idea of playing NHL hockey on an arcade cab is kind of a neat and fun idea, I think.
Thinking of that though, Chris, how do you handle Tate stuff?
I just don't. I mean, if I really wanted to, like, you can rotate the monitor in that thing, but it takes two people.
So it's okay. Yeah, I've seen some of those setups have like the rotatable monitor that can be done by one person with like a whole system inside.
Taito Egret 2s have like a
those
system
freaking
for that,
things are cool as heck.
That's why they're so expensive, even compared to other cabinets. But
yeah, rotating it, I guess, manually like that is not so easy, is it?
It's not. I mean, it's not too bad. It's just like the monitor is hanging on like 4 bolts, and so you just have to take the bezel off and lift the monitor and turn it and put it back in. But like if I do that, then I'm limited to only playing like a few.
All right,
games,
so how about this then? What if you had 2 arcade cabinets, one vertical, one horizontal, and you split the signal so that your Mister's running on both?
Yeah, I think there's a version of the Mistercade coming out that goes to 2.
Because that's like basically what I'm doing with my CRT setup upstairs. Is having the 2 monitors side by side, daisy chained together. And if you had 2 arcade cabinets, I mean, that would be like the ultimate kind of setup right there.
Yeah,
extreme luxury though.
Yes. I mean, I got very lucky. I got that arcade cabinet for a very good price, and I don't think I'm going to get that kind of deal ever again. But I also I have to make some tough decisions about getting rid of some other stuff if I wanted to slide another arcade cabinet in there.
Oh, yeah. No, I understand.
I got all my old computers over there, so.
Your Tandies, right?
Well, there's some Tandies and some other things.
Oh, you got some Tandies.
Oh, yeah, I got 2 Tandy 1000s right there and right there, but I got a couple old Apple IIs back there, and a Amiga 500, and a
I love
Mac
that Tandy
Classic.
sound.
Yeah, dude, Tandies are for playing. I did a video about, I've actually done a video about both of those, but basically the gist of it was, I think if you're trying to play PC games from sort of before the VGA era, so like more 80s, not so much 90s, I think Tandy 1000 is like the best computer to use.
Yeah, my first PC back in the day was an IBM 8086, so it was an IBM Personal System 2. And it was fine for DOS stuff, but of course it had no actual sound capabilities aside from the PC speaker, which frankly, not great.
Just that little thing.
I remember seeing a Tandy 1000 at Radio Shack and being like, "Whoa, that sound! That's rad." And you'd always see Tandy sound in the options menus for setting up games.
Yep, just to tease
right?
you.
Like it was just always in there, and you're like,
Yeah, the Tandy graphics mode.
Exactly. The Tandy graphics mode, of course.
Yeah.
That was good as well.
Yeah.
The IBM Personal System 2, though, had MCGA, which, are you guys familiar with MCGA?
No.
Multicolor graphics array. It's this weird side thing that IBM developed for some specific, it was an IBM specific thing, and it was essentially like a stripped down version of VGA. You could do 320 by 200 with 256 colors, and then it had some high res modes as well. But it was not widely supported because it was an IBM specific thing. But as a kid, I knew about EGA, CGA, and VGA. That first PC did not support. It only supported CGA or MCGA, but I didn't know about MCGA until I bought a specific game, and I tried that mode. And the first time I saw 256 colors in that thing, I went nuts. I was just like, "Are you kidding me? How is this possible?"
Yeah, I might be misremembering, but I thought it was the case that IBM had like contracted with Sierra to make like versions of like King's Quest and whatnot.
They
for
did,
those computers to like show off the.
I think that was for the PC Junior.
Oh
possibly.
yeah, I think you might be right.
And that did not support MCGA. That was a later. MCGA is a really weird thing because it was for their budget PCs, and then the more expensive ones had proper VGA.
Yeah.
So it was not well supported. I think it came after EGA, but it was not backwards compatible with EGA, which was stupid.
Yeah.
So PC graphics stuff back then, the wild time.
Yeah.
Chris
since this is your first time on the show, John, you probably don't know this, but you're listening to episode 18 of Here's My Question for You. 18. It's old enough to vote in some places. No longer old enough, however, to buy cigarettes in the state of California.
Wait, did they change the cigarette?
Yeah, you
age?
have to be 21 now to buy cigarettes here.
In Kentucky you have to be 12.
I was going to say
12, yeah.
No, not really, but
but if
it
that
may
was,
as well be.
I wouldn't have been surprised. No offense to the Kentuckians out there, but
It's interesting because they're going through this this smoking ban in northern Kentucky right now, and it's the same thing that I experienced when I was of age of drinking, and that's they enacted the smoking ban when I was, I think, 21 or 22 in New York State. And everyone's like, oh, it's going to kill the bars, and all these places are going to just and it never does. And they're saying that same thing here.
Yeah.
It never does.
Yeah, I mean, we went through the same thing here because I think that happened around the time I was maybe 20 or 21 years old when they banned smoking in bars and restaurants, and they were making the exact same arguments, like, oh, they're going to kill all the bars, and we all just started going outside and smoking there instead.
What does the smoking ban entail, Coury? Because
it's just smoking inside.
I thought Cincinnati already had this. So
Cincinnati does. I'm talking about
so it's just northern Kentucky.
Well, just Kentucky, I think, in general.
Kentucky in general. I didn't actually realize that. I for some reason I just assumed they both had that.
No,
that's wild.
Previously, until I guess recently, it was based on whether the place wanted to allow smoking inside. A lot of restaurants don't. But there is definitely some diners and stuff in bowling alleys. You can still smoke inside here. It's
interesting you mention that because here in Germany, there is no smoking allowed in most establishments, but it is possible to apply for a specific permit to allow smoking in your facility, which it's pretty rare. But a few weeks ago, some friends and I were looking for a cafe to visit, and we was like, oh, here's one. we went on in, and it was like, oh, it's not too crowded, but instantly you're like getting a face full of smoke.
Yeah.
And it was intense. Like all the smokers went there.
Yeah.
And it's one of the few places that I've ever seen here that actually allows indoor smoking. But
That's a
it
good
is
approach,
possible.
though, to
Yeah, for
you know,
sure.
have it be like equivalent, I guess, of a liquor license.
Exactly. It's like if you smoke and you want to smoke inside, you find a place like that, and that's where you hang out, right? Like,
Yeah.
that works. So,
I think the only other place or the last place, I guess, that I can think of here where you were allowed to smoke inside was literally at smoke shops. Like if you went to like a store where you could buy like cigars and pipe tobacco. And it was funny because there was a mall that I used to go to fairly regularly over here in Sacramento that it was literally right next to EB Games or GameStop, whichever. Right next to it was a smoke shop. And you could smoke in there, but like there was constantly smoke just like wafting out of the front door.
oh my gosh.
It was probably EB Games at the time. Man, I miss.
I can't remember because that mall had both. I think
Okay.
that was the EB Games, and I think the GameStop was like on the other side of the mall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what was the progression of GameStop buying up everybody? Was GameStop and Babbage's like the same company at first, or was it GameStop and Software, et cetera, et cetera?
I hope you're
feel like
asking John because I don't know.
I can't remember the exact. I do remember that EB hung on longer before they were absorbed by GameStop. But I feel like Babbage's must have. In one mall near my house, there was an EB Games and a Babbage's in the same mall, and the Babbage's had been there much longer. And then eventually the Babbage's turned to GameStop. But here's the thing: there was also already a GameStop across the street, so there was like two GameStops and an EB Games in the same place. And then once they acquired EB Games, they closed one of them. And then in the mall, so there was one in the mall and then one across the street outside in a strip mall. And I frequented those quite a bit, I would say.
Yeah.
But I think EB is the one that lasted the longest after that. But I missed some of those early places.
Oh, man.
There was also like Funcoland, I guess. And then before that, there was Video Game Exchange around us, which is where I picked up some choice Game Boy titles back in the day. It was always good.
Funcoland was the first one that we got. Because I remember they sent out like just I guess to everybody. One day I got in the mail. I got some kind of flyer from Funcoland. Oh, we're opening a store in your town, but it had like a full price list in it.
Yes, exactly. We had the same thing at our Funcoland when it opened. It was the big price list.
Yeah,
and Funcoland single-handedly helped me build my Sega Saturn collection, my U.S. collection anyway. And I have so many complete in-box Saturn games that I got from Funcoland, actually. And they were always dirt cheap. And I think I've told this before, but the craziest deals that I got was, like, I think it was Albert Odyssey and a couple others, like Working Designs games, where, like, they just had the disc in the shop. And then I was like, oh, you don't have the box? No, actually, we were just throwing out our Saturn cases because they take up too much space. If you want to go out to the dumpster and take a look. So I did, and I got a ton of like Saturn cases, manuals, and books. So
and then you just find
copies from the dumpster. So I'm pulling out Working Designs games from a dumpster in the back of a Funcoland, and I still got those copies.
That's crazy.
That's great.
That's what Saturn was worth back then. Nobody cared, but I loved it.
Like the craziest story that I've ever heard was a friend of mine told me about how he found a Saturn copy of Mega Man 8 in a trash can in New York City.
Oh, yep.
Just like he was randomly walking down the street and it was just sitting in the trash, or that's
that is what happened, according to him.
Yeah, I don't have any stories like that, unfortunately.
Nothing like that.
No.
But were any of you guys a member of the Funcoland Dream Team, the Sega Dreamcast? I pre-ordered mine from that, and they give you like a shirt and a membership card.
Do you still have those?
Yes, I do.
Oh yeah.
Did that get you anything? The membership? Like, did you get like 10% off Dreamcast games or anything?
It might have been some kind of discount thing. I actually can't recall exactly what it was, but there was definitely something. It was just literally because I pre-ordered the system. Wow. And prior to launch, I used to hang out up at that store playing on the Dreamcast demo kiosks. They had one set up on You remember those Samsung GX TVs with the giant fold-out speakers?
Yeah.
So, I'd sit on that thing and play some Dreamcast games prior to launch, and it got some attention. I remember people walking in and seeing the Dreamcast and being like, whoa. Playing Ready to Rumble boxing on there, and some guy comes in, and he's just like freaking out. Oh my God, he waving! Look at him! It's like a real boxing match! He's going nuts. He loved it. Like it made a strong impression on people at the time. But then you'd always have the guy walk in and be like, Dreamcast, it's just gonna be discontinued. Like, Sega sucks, man. This PlayStation's gonna. And they were actually right, but
Yeah.
I was pretty anti Dreamcast though when it came out.
Just a lot of people were.
Only because it was like I was a PlayStation fanboy. Like, PlayStation is what got me back into playing video games, and so like I was.
Oh wow, okay.
I was in love with my PlayStation, and like I remember I saw the Dreamcast coming out, and I was like, whatever. And then I was at like this house party, and this guy brought a Dreamcast, and like it's like my friend's parents weren't home, so he threw a party. And this guy brings a Dreamcast, and they hook it up in my friend's parents' bedroom, right? And then like a bunch of people are sitting on their bed playing these games, And I remember going up there, and he had Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and I had Tony Hawk's Pro Skater for the PlayStation, And so like I went up there and saw how much better it looks on a Dreamcast, and I guess that made me feel like jealous, but also just kind of like, man, screw that thing with its way better looking graphics. Get out of here. But I did end up buying a Dreamcast later on.
That's good. You rectified that.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Dreamcast was weird because I was at the age where that was the first system I could purchase with my own money at launch.
Yeah.
Same here.
And I became sort of like this arbiter of the Dreamcast. And I probably sold at least a half dozen systems to various people that I know were, just show them the games on there, just like that old Sega CD commercial. Yeah. You have seen the games, right? You do that. You show them the games. You're like, okay, I'm going to go buy this, and they did.
I mean, even even though I was not a sports game fan, I remember seeing NFL 2K for the first time, and it looked like TV, and it may have just been like live TV to me.
That's a very good game. I know you can't really run in that game, but. I mean, it looks good, but I remember just like the commentators and all the crazy stuff they would say. Like, I had to pick when I did that Dreamcast launch video. It was hard, trying to figure out what I was gonna show of the commentator saying, just because it's funny.
Yeah, it's great. That game also had the VMU play calling, if you remember.
Yes.
Which
you could like see the plays like on the screen.
Yeah.
Because if you were playing against somebody, that way you were just picking the plays on your own controller, and the other guy
exactly.
Because if you're playing like Madden against somebody, they
the
won't know the exact play you picked, but like there's
Right.
only so many plays up on the screen. It's like, okay, well, he's in the I formation, and et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly.
So that was a pretty big development.
That was a fun party trick I used to pull with Virtua Tennis on there.
Oh yeah.
When you would play Virtua Tennis, you could actually, the game was replicated on the VMU as like little stick figures.
Yeah.
And it was surprisingly well done to the point where I could actually play whole matches just by looking at the VMU. So I would challenge people to a game of Virtua Tennis and win with my back turned to the screen, just looking at the VMU.
Did they not know that they could
They
look
did
at
know that it was doing it, but they were like, kind of like, really? Like, look at that. It's just like little dots. And I'm like, here, I'll show you.
Yeah.
show them how it works. But I mean, so you're buying this system as the first one you're buying with your own money.
Yeah.
And of course you're going to be like, everyone needs to get this because you want it to be a success. Like everyone wants the thing that they're spending their money on to be the one that's going to last,
Exactly. And
But then you would go and do the same thing with the PS2 a year later.
I got the PS2 right. For me, just PS2 was I was interested in all consoles. So I didn't really care which one. I was really supporting Dreamcast, but I was also like, well, PS2. Didn't think it was going to live up to the hype, but I was still interested in it. And really, all it took was like seeing Tekken and Ridge Racer, like actually playing them for the first time on like a friend's import machine, and just the fluidity of it. I was like, whoa. And I instantly saw things on there that I'd never seen before. Like Ridge Racer having depth of field during the replays, like camera style depth of field in a video game. That didn't exist before that. There was nothing like that ever. There was some weird attempts in like Metal Gear Solid 1, but it was just fake stuff. But like actually seeing like real blur in a game, like I remember that specifically kind of blowing my mind. Like I couldn't believe that was
like
actually
it's a real
thing.
camera.
Yeah, and then there was also stuff like Tekken Tag where they had they simulated specular highlights on the floor. So these geometric modeled floors, and like as the lighting would pass over it, you'd actually see like the glare of the light in the floor that accurately mapped to the light in the scene, which was like, again, this was before pixel shaders and such. So this was like, I'd never seen anything like it. Same with the grass stage, like full blades of grass in a video game. Like people forget, but that just didn't exist before that. And I think Tekken Tag was the first one I ever played that had that kind of representation of grass. I mean, you couldn't even get that on the PC at that point. Like it was just a very new thing.
We were all, jonesing for blades of grass in video games ever since Ghouls and Ghosts, right?
Oh yeah, the blowing sprite grass. Heck yeah.
Yeah, like, oh, this isn't arcade perfect because there's no blades of grass in front of Arthur's feet.
But I mean,
oh my god,
up until that point, like I remember seeing Sonic Adventure, which had like a really great looking grass texture. There's something about it that it was really, really detailed versus anything I'd ever seen. And I feel like that's one of the first things that jumped out at me when I first saw a Dreamcast in action. I saw it, with Sonic Adventure, and like, look at the grass.
Sonic makes a good first impression. The texture detail was really high compared to anything else, and it just had this really vibrant, detailed look to it. Mm-hmm. But I was bummed out that all the previews prior to me actually playing it were like, oh yeah, it's a smooth 60 frames per second. And then I actually played it, and it's like, wait, this is not 60 frames per second. But, okay, from the bank of useless knowledge, here's this thing about Sonic Adventure. So, in that game, as you finish the story modes, they open up the stages in the time attack mode, right? And here's the thing. If you play the time attack versions of those stages, they all have a slower frame rate. There's severe slowdown in time attack mode that's not present in the regular story mode. So the time attack versions just run a lot worse, and they drop way below 30 frames per second a lot.
Why? Like, why would that happen? I wonder.
I don't know. I never understood why it happened. I never saw anybody else talk about it. I'm sure that people that pulled the game apart have, but it's this weird thing that always drove me nuts back in the day, because I just wanted to replay stages,
like, it just sounds
and they
like
always ran worse. Like, exactly. And for all I know, maybe it was Sonic Adventure had so many iterations, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's the original Japanese release, which is a buggy, broken, horrible mess. And then there was like the special edition for Hollywood Video that was like this half-finished version that was based on the Japanese version, but it was in the midst of being localized, but it still had a lot of bugs. Then there was the launch version that had plenty of bugs, but was better than those other versions. And then there was like a later version where the title screen had this like wavy water effect on it,
right,
that was in no other prior versions. So there was at least 4. There might be more, but there was at least 4 unique versions of that game for the Dreamcast, and they all had differences.
That's crazy.
So again, file that under useless knowledge, but
I'll never forget it now. I'll always be on the lookout for it, I guess.
Yes. All right.
Yeah. Hey, what are those speakers you got behind you there that are hooked up to?
Oh, those?
Yeah.
Those are KEF R300s, I think.
See, I was going to guess KEF, but I look stupid, so I didn't.
I liked it. Exactly. Yeah, I have all KEF speakers there.
Yeah. I also see that you're wearing Sennheiser headphones there. So I can rave about these because I bought these headphones in 2007, and they still are in flawless condition. Like, there's not a crack at all on any of the material here. The plastic's in perfect condition. They still sound great, and I use them a lot. Like, it's surprising to me because electronics like this that are used heavily don't typically last that long, and most of their headphones that I've had over the years, like earbuds and things like that, they just don't hold up that well, right?
Like
you end up replacing
them
fairly often, but these things, I really have no reason to replace them right now.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I think, I could get a different pair, but it's like, well, these things are still pretty good. They sound nice and they've held up extremely well. So yeah, build quality on these, really impressive.
Yeah. I mean, we've already done this topic on the show, but I'm a huge fan of Sennheiser. So like this microphone is Sennheiser. My other microphone is Sennheiser. These in-ear monitors are Sennheiser, and I've got a pair of like over-the-ear open-back headphones just for listening to music, not for the show, that are also Sennheiser. So they don't sponsor the show, but I think that they should.
They make good stuff.
Yes.
That would be a good thing.
Yes.
We can wear all Sennheiser stuff.
Yeah.
On the show if they want to. we always joke about like, if these people want to sponsor it, like we're just like all about selling out like that. Not really, but like only like the stuff that we like.
Well, yeah, it's just it's frustrating that it's like, why can't the people whose products I love be the ones that want to sponsor my show instead of like the people that do, you know? Like instead of Raid Shadow Legends or whatever it's called, you know, why can't it be, you know, Mogami Cables or something, you know, or Sennheiser?
What about Hero Wars? Y'all seen those sick new Hero Wars commercials?
No, I haven't seen that one, but
that's good.
Yeah,
you don't want to.
Yeah. Hey, what is now a good time you think for our segment? The only segment we have. All right.
Yeah. Are we ready to roll it?
Yeah.
Let's
you're
roll
the one
it.
that's going to be on the hot seat, John. So.
All right, let's do it.
All right.
All right. Here we go.
Does he slap? 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 Assuredly, yeah.
I love the glass shattering at the end.
Yeah, that's like the cherry
that's you
on
like
top
eating
right
it,
there.
right?
I guess. Yes. It must be. You're eating it through a window. All right. So since John is our guest today, I have prepared a Does It Slap or Should We Eat It list for him based on my limited knowledge of his interests. So,
all right.
But I think this is going to be tough. And actually, one of the things in here I'm hoping is going to lead us into the next topic of discussion. Okay. So, John, your three things, and remember, you can only keep one, are manual transmissions, RGB monitors, and the Sega Mega Drive / Sega Genesis. So to be clear, you can keep one. The other two you can never have any contact with again.
They don't stop existing in the world, but you just can't use them.
Right.
Okay.
You get to see other people driving around, shifting gears with a big smile on their face.
I will explain my thought process then.
Please do.
So, manual transmissions, yes, I do love them. But they have become increasingly rare at this point, and the rise of electric cars and hybrids have also eliminated them. When I bought my last car in 2020, I searched high and low all over Germany for a manual transmission, and they're so rare. I just could not get it, so I ended up with another automatic after having a manual for the last 8 years prior to that. So I guess I can cross that off the list because it's just not as feasible to get anymore anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, RGB monitors. I'm going to say that only refers to the specific type of like RGB connection, and it doesn't eliminate CRTs.
Yes, you can have consumer
YPB,
grade
PR, or whatever.
Yes, you can have consumer grade CRTs, but all the PVMs and BVMs and other VMs you've got in your house got to go.
But what if I have like an arcade monitor? That's not, and
is
to convert component
is it in an
video
arcade
to it.
machine? I
Doesn't
think if
have
it's
to
in
be.
an arcade machine, it can stay in the arcade machine.
All right, well, I'll do that.
But I don't want to say Sony PVMs because then you're just going to go get a Panasonic or something. You know what I'm saying? You're going to cheat. So
I could live with consumer CRTs, even though I wouldn't want to have to, because frankly, I have to keep the Mega Drive. I cannot imagine like just eliminating that entirely. It's just too darn important to everything I've just gaming history for me and my own tastes. And yeah, there's plenty of other stuff to play outside of that, of course. But just the idea of eliminating that entirely would be a horrific thing. So there's no way I could ever just toss that away. I'm going with that one. It slaps.
Good. I mean, that would have been my choice too, just for the record.
Excellent.
For the record, I had like multiple like does it slap or should we yeet it for John that I could like many of them I can only think of like two, and I couldn't think of a third one.
Well, if you've got three you want to put together and hit them again, like please feel free.
Bring it.
Oh,
bring
I can
it
take
on.
stuff from all of them if I wanted to. I guess.
You
Do
can
it.
do whatever.
I mean,
you
the
want.
one that I only had three of, that I had three in it was, video game console related, which was I had PC Engine, Vita, or Dreamcast. Like, which one would you keep? But
Oh. Okay.
Wow, to me that's not even close. But I know you're not asking me, so you know what my answer is going to be.
Am I answering that one?
I mean, if you want to, you can.
I could.
PC Engine, Vita, or Dreamcast?
Man, as much as I love Vita and Dreamcast, I've come to appreciate the PC Engine so much in the last 10 years. Like, I think it's just too darn good. And
Thank you. That's the obvious
quite
answer.
frankly, like, most of the best Dreamcast stuff is available on other platforms. Right? So,
Yeah.
like, I wouldn't actually be missing out on that much
Definitely.
now. So, and then the Vita, Vita's cool, but it's significantly less cool than either of those machines.
Yeah.
PC Engine wins.
I was so
It slaps.
disappointed with the Vita, personally.
Yeah.
And I mean, I love my PSP, and then I got a Vita, and it's like such cool hardware, but there were just never any games on it that I really like. I used it basically to play Hot Shots Golf, and that's it.
Oh,
I'm
that's a
not
good
saying
version
that's
of
the
Hot
only
Shots
good
Golf,
game,
though.
but I'm saying I would go to the store, like, all right, I want to buy a Vita game, and I would look, and there was just nothing that jumped out at me. That
Yeah, you had to work to get the good Vita games. I think, like, you just couldn't go to a store and get them.
yeah. But I was very happy just playing the golf, because I was traveling a lot for work, and I was riding on airplanes all over the place, and I would just sit there and play golf all day. I was pretty happy with that. Like, I never regretted my purchase. I would say that.
Yeah, it's a good system. There's great stuff on there, but it never truly came into its own in the same way as, I would say, the PSP, which is one of the best handhelds ever made.
Right. And that's what got me to buy a Vita, is I love the PSP so much.
Same, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, this ain't no PSP2. It's something else.
Exactly. Okay, so Coury kind of suggested that I should talk to you about this, and so that's leading into it with my Does It Slap thing. So we don't have time to go over this in an exhaustive manner, but Coury told me that you've had a very interesting sort of history in car ownership. That you've had a lot of interesting cars.
Because I remember,
And-
like when we were driving back from
many
North
cars.
Carolina, you're like, oh, I'm gonna go through like all the cars that you've had.
Oh, yeah, we did that. That was fun.
Yeah. So I was just going to maybe, if you can give a condensed version, I was going to just ask if you could pick like three cars. They could be your favorite three or the most interesting three or just three that had cool stories of, something having to do with them. And share that.
I'll just run through them, actually, because,
All right.
it's not that many. I'm not like a car YouTuber, so I don't have like a fleet, right? Like,
Yeah.
I have a car and then another car after
Yeah.
that car, right?
You're not like Doug DeMuro.
No, I am not like that.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately. But, so, I mean, the first car I ever had that was the one that I owned and drove was a 1987 Chevrolet Celebrity. I don't know if you guys remember the Celebrity, but it is a four-door sedan from Chevy. It was kind of a shit box, if I may. It was not. It was a car my parents had that I just kind of inherited when I started driving, and the paint was defective, so all the paint had faded off of it. But it was built like a tank. Like, it was in some accidents, but you couldn't tell. Like, the thing just took the hits like it was nothing. But it was so slow. Like, just going up a hill, like I would have to turn off the air conditioning when I went up a hill because otherwise it wouldn't get over 30 miles an hour. That's the top speed there with the AC on. It was pretty bad.
I had a car like that too. Yeah.
So that was not the best. And then eventually I got rid of it because apparently there was like a hole in the block at some point that had occurred, and it was pretty bad. So we ditched that. The next car I took on was again one from my parents, and it was a I kid you not, it was a Dodge Caravan from 1989, long version.
Oh,
And
it is.
the thing about the Caravan though is that it actually came at the right time, because that's the car I had during most of college. So college was for me like, hey, what if we did like PC LAN parties or played Halo Networked, which meant, of course, hauling CRTs around. And a very long van is very good for hauling lots of CRTs, which I did a lot of. So I also, when I was purchasing CRTs during this era, I was very picky, and like, so was a friend of mine. We would often buy the set, bring it home, be unhappy with some aspect of it, pack it up, take it back, swap it for a different model. And there was one time where I swapped like with 4 different models in the course of like a week. I think they hated me at that point, but the Caravan got me. But the one crazy story about the Caravan is I was driving home one day on the highway, and one of the middle windows just like popped, shattered. I don't know what triggered it, but the whole window just blew out, and I'm surprised I didn't have an accident, because it was kind of terrifying.
Like you thought someone was shooting at you.
Yeah, I was going to say,
it
it could have been
like
like a stray bullet or something, for all you know.
It kind of felt that way. Yeah, it was nuts. So there was that. God, in the next car was followed. It was another Chevrolet. Good Lord. It was what's the name of it? The Chevy, what's the little hatchback they had for a while? I'm blanking on the name for some reason.
I don't know. I'm not like a big.
It started in the 80s and it went up through the early 2000s. It was man, I can't believe I forgot the name of it. But it was a little 2-door hatchbacky looking thing that was kind of not super powerful, but it got the job done, and I installed a stereo in it, which was awesome at the time, with one of those face plates. Remember the removable face plates?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
With all the LED lights on there. So there was that, and it was a bright yellow one. Actually, I got the name. Cavalier, the Chevy Cavalier.
Oh, I didn't remember that being a hatchback.
It's...
Maybe they had a hatchback version or something.
The 2-door coupe version was it. The whole trunk window thing. Did it or did it not? Or maybe I'm thinking wrong. Maybe it's not a hatch. It looked like it would be, but it may not have been.
I could also
be
wrong. So,
but yeah, no, I think you might be right. I think it was just a normal trunk, but it looked very hatchback like. But it was all right. And then those were all the cars I had up to this point, which were not amazing. But
those, like you said you inherited or whatever the celebrity, but the other two, that was a conscious decision you made that I'm buying. Well, no,
I inherited the van and the celebrity, but the Cavalier was a conscious choice. Okay. And it was a used one, but it was all right. It got the job done so I went to Japan after that, and when I came back, I then had to get myself a new car. And this was the first time I got a car that I thought was pretty nice for myself. It was a 2006 Mazda 6. And I liked the Mazda 6 a lot. It was a really nice kind of, 4-door car. And I kind of stick with the 4-door cars because I need a little bit of space after that small 2-door. And I don't know if you guys have any experience with that, but the Mazda 6, it's a peppy little car. It's a nice ride. I really enjoyed that one a lot, actually. And
does it look like is it like sporty at all?
It's pretty sporty, I'd say, especially for the time. It had some really nice features in it. It was well upholstered, a good ride. I definitely liked the Mazda 6. But then I upgraded one more time in the U.S. And I really liked it at the time. I got an Acura TSX, which was a really nice little driving car, actually. And that replaced the Mazda. And that was the first one I owned that had like a full infotainment system, with the nav display and all that stuff. And
oh, wow.
All those types of features and Bluetooth connections. That was the first time I actually experienced any of that stuff. And that was cool, I thought, at the time, right? And I would say that ended up being one of my favorite cars because it wasn't the fastest, but it had it felt good to drive. The engine was like, the engine in the TSX is comparable to like what's in like a Civic SI, right? So it's got a little bit of pep, but not like, it's not a super powerful car, but it was good. It was good. And I kept that until I moved to Europe. And then coming to Europe, it's like, all right, well, if I'm moving here, I need to get European cars, right? So
That's what I would do.
The first one I got then was a BMW 528, which was that was a big step up from everything I'd driven before. And of course, I got it with the manual transmission. And that's when I fell in love with manual transmissions.
Okay,
really.
So you didn't have manual transmission before that?
No, before that, actually, my wife did.
Oh, okay.
So I guess technically I had more cars. Like she had a Ford Focus with a manual transmission and then got a Volkswagen Jetta wagon, which is really just a Golf estate over here with the manual transmission. And the turbo diesel Golf with a manual transmission is actually real fun. Those are nice to drive. So that was the car that sold me on manual transmission. And then when I came to Europe, it was the BMW I got with the manual transmission. And I drove the heck out of that from up until 2020. And I put a lot of miles on it. And then I was like, all right, this is getting pretty high mileage. And, you know, once you cross a certain mileage on those big BMWs, the service costs can start to get high, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't want to get in. They're like, yeah, you're coming up on that one on the big service, and I'm like, I don't really want to come up on the big service.
Yeah, I'd
So
put
I was
that
like,
money towards something else.
It's time to switch. And so the one I currently have, which is definitely among my favorite, is I got a BMW 430i. So I went down a range, but the 430 is essentially like, it's like a longer, coupier version of the 3 Series. So it's the Grand Coupe, as they call it. And it does actually have a true proper hatchback on it, which is very useful. And that thing is very low to the ground. It's quite sporty to drive. And yeah, I wanted to get one with a manual transmission so bad, but they are so hard to find here. I literally only found 3 or 4 that were actually available to purchase with a manual transmission. And they were all like low spec versions. I wanted the bigger engine and like specific like leather colors and all that kind of stuff. And they just didn't have them with the manual transmission. And I was so bummed out by that. But in the end, I got used to the automatic again, and I've accepted my fate. And it's been a really fun, reliable. I would say, honestly, these cars have been very reliable for me. I don't know if it's the difference between American. You always hear like, oh, it's German cars are unreliable and expensive, but these have been the most reliable cars I've ever owned, to be honest. Like, I just don't really have problems with them. Just do the regular service when it's time, and then they just go. And
I think that's part of the problem, though,
and
is I think a lot of people don't do the regular service that they're supposed to do. Like, they think that you don't need to. You know, like in the manual, it'll okay, this many miles you do this, that many miles you do that, and you have to go do it.
Right.
And people just don't. The people wait until there's a symptom of a problem and then go get it fixed, and then get sticker shock when it's something that might not have even broken in the first place if you had done your regular service.
That's the thing, right? And in the current one, even, it's all tracked in the head unit, like in the iDrive system. And it's also tracked like enough where like the dealer knows now, which I thought was at first a little bit weird, but it's like fine, where it's like I was coming up on one of my services and I got a phone call from the BMW dealer and like, oh, you want to schedule your next service? We see that you're coming up on it. I was like, oh, that's weird, but okay, why not?
Yeah.
So it is convenient. So I was able to just go in there and do that, and it's great. So yeah, I think it feels like as long as you're cautious with service and taking good care of it, seems to be really solid. One other weird thing about living over here, though, is in Germany you need to have winter tires. So I have 2 sets of wheels for the car.
Oh, you got to change them out? Like,
I change them out, and the thing is like my summer tires I freaking love. I got big 19-inch rims on there that are like real nice. I love the way they look. But then the winter ones are like smaller 17 inches. They're fine. They're like 5, the star design kind of wheels. But, you know, it makes the car look less cool in the winter, I would say. If I could put it that way. It's like, oh, I'm in winter mode here.
yeah.
But I mean,
mean,
isn't
if
that
you
something
go
you have
for
to
that.
do here too if you live in a cold climate?
You don't
Yeah, we have to do that in
Or
Buffalo,
are you
we
saying
had
in
to.
Germany it's like the law?
It's the law.
Oh, you can get pulled over if you're like cruising around in
Well,
summer tires.
okay, so you don't really get pulled over in Germany. That's another thing. Like cops
Oh,
don't
alright.
just sit. They sit there and sometimes with their cameras,
Yeah.
and they will like snap speeds, and then if you were speeding, you get a ticket in the mail.
Yeah,
But tickets are cheap. They're like 10 euros,
yeah.
like 10
wow.
bucks for a speeding ticket. It's nothing. You don't really get pulled over. But if you had an accident and you were not using the correct tires,
Oh,
gonna cost you big time. Insurance won't cover anything.
Wow.
As
That's really
we've seen.
intense.
So like you need to pay attention to this and get the correct tires in your car.
Yeah.
I think all seasons are possible, but I've been using just winter and summer tires, and it is interesting the driving distance difference between them. The summer tires definitely feel noticeably different.
Is it just a smoother
just
ride,
in the
or
way
is
they
it?
grip and
Oh,
the winter tires have like almost a slightly bouncier feel to them, and just the way they grip is a little different. Where the summer tires just feels like you can be a little more athletic with your driving, and also there's a maximum speed on the winter tires of like, I forget what it is, but they don't want you to exceed like 200 something kilometers per hour on the winter tires. But that's another thing in Germany. Yes, you can. There are many highways with no speed limit, and people definitely take advantage of it, including myself. It can be exhilarating, but you really have to really be serious about driving when you're going over like 200 kilometers an hour or something, right? Like it's at that point that you make a mistake and it's over. So
yeah.
no messing around.
John, didn't you get to go and like drive some like sports car on some track or something?
Yeah,
like
I
that?
got to drive a Lamborghini Huracan up in the French mountains down in the Alsace region, and holy moly, that was that was
it was like
insane.
was it like a birthday thing?
Yeah. My wife took me down there. It's like, oh wow, I get to drive this. So we went cruising around in a Lambo. And again, since I'm no car YouTuber, I'm not Doug DeMuro. I don't exactly have access to this stuff normally. So that was my first time driving something like that, and like just the experience and the way you drive is so different because of the downforce. Like when you're taking turns in that, you actually can just accelerate into the curve and just like take it almost like a car on like one of those little magnetic tracks, right?
Oh,
there's no body roll, or like so little, you just kind of like zoop right around the corner. It feels so weird coming from any
Probably
other.
feel invincible.
And I suspect I could understand after driving it why people get into accidents, right?
Yeah.
Because you start to feel like, oh, this car can do anything, but then it's not actually true. And there's going to be circumstances where you push it the wrong way, and
Yeah.
suddenly, you've just wrecked your Lamborghini. So
Do you think that like spoiled like all cars? Like, I mean, not all cars, but like your
I would
impressions
love to
of
have
cars?
something like that at some point. They are very fun, and it's insane how low you sit in that thing, right? Like you literally, it feels like you're like just a couple inches off the ground. Like when you're sitting, you're way down deep in this cockpit, and it feels really weird, but it's quite fun to drive.
Does that have like the manual transmission like on the steering wheel or something?
Those are the ones that the newer ones all use paddle shifters. I would love to take an older Lamborghini out, like with an actual old stick shift, right? Like the Diablo SV or something. I would be totally into that. That would be cool. I don't think I would fit in the older Countach though. The Countach like ruled the 80s, but if you actually sit in one, it's like you can't put the seat back hardly at all, and it's just barely any room to even.
And that's
cram
that's
into
like the
that thing.
iconic looking Lamborghini, right?
It's made for tiny Italian men, basically. And if you don't fit that profile, you're probably not going to fit in the Countach.
It's I had a friend, his dad owned a car dealership, and we just thought it's the coolest thing. It was a Dodge car dealership, and
Oh yeah, cool.
and he got to drive it, like he drove around a Viper for
Dude, the Vipers. There's original Vipers, man. Have you seen those things? I don't understand how they sold them. They're basically like a death trap. Like there's like no safety, like no like limits or like it's
no
just
limits.
it's like a rocket on wheels. The early ones didn't even have like windows. Like they had like this snap-on thing. Like it had a front windshield, but like no actual like side windows. It was literally like a plastic sheet you would like snap on to cover it up. And it didn't even have like door handles on the outside. You actually just had to reach inside and open it. So you basically couldn't like lock it, right? So if you took your Viper out, anybody could just walk up and open the darn thing up because, that's how you open the car. You literally reach inside. It was basically like a crazy, weird racing car thing that Dodge put together, and it was stupidly fast at the time, but also without traction control or any of those other safety measures in it. As I understand, there was a lot of accidents with those cars early on because they're just, it's not exactly meant for the type of people that might buy them, I would say. Other than the ones that are real serious about driving.
Yeah. I mean, we just thought it was the coolest thing, like that he had this. But I mean, obviously, this was like early to mid '90s. I feel like,
wow.
My real experience of like finding out what a Viper was thanks to the Need for Speed. That's where I first saw one. I guess.
What about Viper Racing from Sierra? They put out a dedicated racing game on the PC that was just Vipers.
I didn't know
really.
about that.
It was actually pretty good. No joke. But yeah.
Do you have like one like all-time favorite like racing video game?
Oh, racing video game. If I look in my heart, it's a weird one to go with, but it's Ridge Racer 5. That's the one. I think it's my favorite ever.
Like even more than Daytona?
Yeah. Daytona 2. I would put Daytona 1 because of what it meant. Daytona 1 would be like number 2, and then Outrun 2 would be number 3.
Outrun's up there. It might be
There's this joy to Ridge Racer 5 that's like never been matched anywhere else for me. Like it just has the right amount of technical quality in terms of the driving mechanics, right? Like later Ridge Racer games were way simplified, and the ones before that were a little twitchy and not that refined. But Ridge Racer 5 is like tuned to perfection. It is so good, the handling and the course design and just the atmosphere. It has that, like, I like to describe it as that year 2000 aesthetic. Where there's just some like the skies and the color usage and like the vibe of the internet and like cyber things like rising up. Like early 2000s games totally had this vibe going on that I find so darn just appealing and awesome. You really see it in a game like Tekken 4. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where like most of the fights take place at like dusk. The sun is setting. You're starting to see the stars in the sky. There's lots of glass and metal. Feels very future and polished, and like this is the future that's coming. And Ridge Racer 5 definitely has a lot of that going on, and it's an aesthetic that it's very different from Sega Blue Skies.
Yeah,
but it's way before we got into the whole like brown realism,
grim
tones.
dark type stuff.
Right. It's still.
It's interesting, very special. Just like the time in which that was developed, because I've been digitizing like all these like old VHS tapes, and I found that one that was like 6.5 hours of just like MTV from like 1999. Whoa. And it's such an interesting thing because it's like this look at the world like where 9/11 hadn't happened yet.
Yep.
Because like my wife and I watched the movie Go. Have you ever seen Go?
I've seen Go, yeah. I saw it in the theaters even.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Chris, have you seen Go?
Danbury.
No, I have not. Sorry.
You should check it out. But it's like that came out in 1999, and it's just like this. Like 1999 might be like this snapshot of like, just like almost like a world of, I don't know, like at least in our like middle class, like white guy lives in North America, I guess. Like it seemed like this, it was like a world where, You know, like there's so much potential and
Things are going to be
possibility.
all right. Things are going to
Yeah.
be cyber.
Yeah,
It's gonna be great.
exactly. Like no matter, like things are going to be okay. And it's just like it's
The
interesting
Matrix
to
was
look
right about that, by the way. The whole thing is the machines created a world based on 1999, right?
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
they were right.
You know, where 9/11 hadn't happened yet. It's just an interesting, just like thought, I guess. Like
I'm with you.
where,
1999, man. So much good stuff then.
but all that stuff. I mean, those games you're talking about, like, are all in development then, and you know, like you
Absolutely.
see a lot of the, watching like the commercials and everything. Like they're all pretty obnoxious. But one thing I was kind of shocked by, and this is something that was like off a tape that I recorded yesterday from, I think it was 1995, and I feel like they had to have gotten in trouble for it, because I'm like looking at it, it's like this is definitely illegal, where this company was selling like perfume and fragrances that were just like cheap versions of expensive ones, and it's like straight up called designer imposters.
What?
Like that's the name of
Okay.
the company, like making them is called Designer Imposters. I have no idea if they're still around. I doubt it. Like
could
that
that
just
even
seems like such a
So like instead of obsession, it was like some word that rhymed with obsession. You're saying?
yes, and it's like it says all of the same like great smell of something at a fraction of the price.
Wait, so is this pretty much like the perfume equivalent of Kaiko Labs or whatever?
Yeah, or
Sounds
just like
like it.
any kind of like, anything that's like a knockoff of. It's like
Total knockoff.
the fragrance version of like, Mr. Pibb. Is Mr. Pibb is
yeah.
like, or Doctor.
Yeah,
it's like
Mr. Pibb is like Coke's version of Dr. Pepper, right? Because isn't Dr. Pepper a Pepsi
but,
thing?
But there was it's like I guess in Western New York we had like Food Club versions of stuff. Here it's like just like the Kroger brand is like the knockoffs of like
When
the
I think
more
of
expensive-
knockoffs, I think of those backpacks with like Black Sonic on it. It just says like Obama on it. You're just like,
Oh, just like
what is this?
like just random.
It's just like random things jammed together and thrown on a backpack, and you're like, okay, like this doesn't make any sense.
I think you can go to like Walmart and they have like Dr. Soda or something like that. It's some
Yeah,
real
it's
stupid.
Doctor. What they have here is Dr. Thunder.
Oh yeah, that's it, Dr. Thunder.
Dr. Thunder. Now we're talking.
That sounds like a 80s WWF wrestler.
It does.
Yeah.
It instantly channels that, doesn't
Oh
it?
man, did you see what George the Animal Steel did to Dr. Thunder last night?
Dr. Thunder. Like it's not only are you named Thunder, but you're also a doctor.
Did you know that
Exactly.
George the Animal Steel was like a history teacher or something? Like if you look it up, like he was a teacher, that was his day job, and then he would go on TV and like be George the Animal Steel and eat the
Did like his
turnbuckles and
students
whatnot.
not know? Or they probably all know.
I mean, they must have
probably thought it was the
known. I
coolest.
mean, how can you not?
Well, that's the same with like Britt Baker in AEW, right? Like she's a dentist, I think, for real,
What?
and also
That's
plays
awesome.
a dentist in the ring.
Wow.
So it's like it's like a weird thing, right? Where it's like, okay, there's this day job and then there's this other job.
Yeah.
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 Hey, speaking of I don't watch wrestling anymore, but I liked it when I was a kid, and my friend just told me, and this also gives me an excuse to drag Coury's favorite new phrase out. If you hop on the cawk, you can watch. They have all of the every WrestleMania ever streaming. If you hop
Wait, what?
on the
Really?
yeah.
On Peacock.
It's Peacock. Corey's
Yeah.
trying to make it happen where if you say you're gonna watch anything on Peacock, you say you're gonna hop on the cock.
Up on the cock.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
But I mean,
It has got to be CAWK.
yes, because we don't want to be filthy.
Yeah.
But I thought, because I watched like probably the first 3 or 4 WrestleManias when I was a kid, because you could go to the video store and you could rent them, sometime after the fact, and so I would do that. I thought it would be a trip. I quit watching wrestling probably by the time WrestleMania 4 happened, which is probably like 1988 or something. But
Yeah.
those would be a trip to go watch again.
Yeah. I mean, I stopped watching, I think, when, I mean, it had to have been like late 80s
Yeah.
when I stopped watching. And I remember when.
Wow, I watched up until the late 90s. I was
Oh,
in
really?
the
So you were
Attitude
like
era.
all the way, like the Attitude? Yeah, where it was.
Yeah, I fell out in the
people
mid
say it was, like,
90s
the
a
best
bit, but then a
time.
friend of mine was back into it, so we watched some of that. We did watch some ECW, stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. So I watched that for a while, and then
ECW,
after that.
WCW. WCW was like, they were
Oh, yeah.
bought by WWF.
yeah.
I mean, I still call it out of habit. I just still call it WWF. I don't.
prefer that. Yeah, WWE. Come on.
Yeah.
What is E?
I just remember
No.
that the WWF, like the logo, the metal logo.
The logo. Yeah, the
Yeah, it's
freaking
so
logo,
good.
man. It's so good.
But I remember
God, I
being
love-
really disappointed when they would have well, I mean, not disappointed, but they're like when SNL was on, sometimes they wouldn't have SNL on. They would show wrestling instead. It was
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Saturday Night Main Event or something like that.
Yeah, I believe that's what it was called.
Yeah.
God,
And on one of those. Oh,
Go ahead.
No, you got it.
No, I was just thinking, like, there's so many wrestling games in existence, and I typically don't get into them because they're more technical and execution
Yeah.
based. But I freaking love WWF Wrestlemania, the arcade game
Yeah.
from Midway. Right? That's basically like that is the NBA Jam of wrestling games.
Oh,
And it has that
100%.
same kind of pick
Yeah.
up
Yeah,
and
it's like
play.
the same
It's
people, right?
complete insanity. It's so fast paced.
It has Doink the Clown
I
in
love
it.
playing that game. It does have Doink the Clown, and I think like there's so many, like, each character has different stuff come out of them when you hit them. You
Yeah.
know, like at points, and it's just like it's so weird, but it's so
Isn't
great.
there like doesn't it have like like crazy endings too? Like isn't there one? It's like
I think so, yeah.
like somebody, I don't remember who it was, like travels the world like and like brings world peace.
Dude, that was
I
such
can't remember who it was though.
That'd be nice.
That game rules. Also,
I mean,
Capcom's Muscle Bomber games are good.
Like Saturday Night
Saturday Night
Masters thing.
Slam Masters.
Yeah.
But I love the Japanese title Muscle Bomber, the body explosion. Like that. That's a freaking amazing title.
That sounds like
Yeah.
something that happens to you after you eat Taco Bell.
Explosion. I mean,
that's true.
What is the like the Japanese names for everything is like always like is better. Like isn't the Fast and the Furious movies called like Wild Speed or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. I think so.
Wild Speed. And
Wild Speed.
like what was the double dribble game called? Like the Genesis one.
Oh yeah.
It has like a really, really good name.
Am I allowed to look at physical things on the shelf?
Well, I
You can
think
look at
that's
you
okay.
can-
It's just about not taking your phone out and stuff like that.
There's
Yeah.
no screen, but I had
What double dribble on the
Hyper
Genesis?
Dunk. Hyper Dunk.
Oh, I like that.
That's what it is. That's such a good name. Hyper Dunk.
I mean, that could be a
Oh,
whole
man.
video. Like games, they have better names than Japan.
I mean, that's pretty common, I think.
That
Especially
sounds
back
like a
then, but
GameSack episode, you know?
Yeah.
It sounds extremely GameSack. That's yeah.
We should
Today we're
suggest
talking
that.
about games that have better names in Japan.
Yeah.
Like show
I mean-
close up of box, slam the cartridge in the slot. Let's go.
Yeah.
It's Hyper Dunk.
Well,
Hyper
just
Dunk. The body
his
explosion.
show is like interesting because basically it's like I want to take 10 games and talk about them, and you just have to find
Theme.
something you can use to tie them together. It really
Yeah.
doesn't matter
It's-
what. So it could be
fantastic.
something. It could be something as silly as games that have better names in Japan, because ultimately
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what the topic is. You know,
Exactly. I think
you
maybe I'll
watch
suggest that
GameSack
to
because
him.
it's GameSack. You know,
Yeah. It's just like, pulling random games out. I mean, I think we should suggest that to him. Like, I think that he'd be
Yeah.
like, okay.
Yeah.
His, like, I mean, we got to have Joe on here. Like, and we've already talked about having him on. But, like, he has, like, the craziest work ethic. Like, he's a workaholic. You know, he was, like, messing around with something. I think I told John about this, where he was, like, messing around with, like, pulling these sound files from Genesis games. Like, these ones. Those ones. And, he's like spending like an entire evening. I said, you just spent like an entire evening, figuring this out. He's like, well, good thing I have 5 episodes in the can. Just like ready to go.
I can't even imagine.
Can you imagine that? Yeah.
The only time that happens is like with the Patreon setup we have now for the DF Retro videos, when I make those really long episodes, they come out first for the patrons as the full thing, and then I can split it into multiple pieces for public release.
Yeah.
And then that ends up lasting for a while. Like the PS3 1080p Dream, that lasted all of July last year, since I split it up into 4 parts.
I've never ever had an episode in the can ever. Like I make them and then I release them. I've never had like, oh yeah, I have this one to release later.
That would be amazing to like have that situation.
That's tough to do. It depends on what you cover, though. I mean, for retro, it's maybe a little more feasible.
Yeah.
Because it's stuff that's already exists. So if you're covering new stuff, though, it's like it's impossible.
Yeah, because you need to get it. I mean, you need to get it out as fast as you can, for one.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing I've always been curious about, John, because like you release like several, like at least one video a week, on Digital Foundry, and like what you've always struck me as like somebody who's very good at like time management.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's one of my skills, I think.
Yeah, so like how do you excel at that? Like, what are some of your time management skills? Like just I don't know, tips.
So it weirdly, I think it stems from anxiety more than anything initially. Like that's where it was born from, because I didn't like missing things or being late on stuff.
I bet you don't like naps either.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've always hated naps because I always felt like I was missing something.
Yeah, exactly. I don't like naps. I don't really do that. So that's kind of the main thing is it's like, all right, but what ended up happening, especially with this type of work I do now, is I've just developed a pretty good understanding of exactly how long it will take to reach the finish line. Like it's almost like a sixth sense where I can just feel like, all right, if I just work on this, I know I can get this done by this date, right? And I try to think about all the potential bottlenecks as early as possible and tackle them, or at least schedule them, like understand like, all right, well, for this thing, I could get stuck on this could take X amount of time. So to keep myself from being over pressured, I just like, okay, this will probably take at least a couple days, or this will slow me down X number of hours. And I also view that for like things like if I'm doing a video and it's like, oh man, I want to get this cool shot, or I want to do this one thing, I can think like, all right, if I actually want to do that and I get all the equipment out and get everything set up, it will take at least 2 or 3 hours, right? And that's a chunk of my day that I have available, and I have X number of days until it needs to release. Can I afford to spend that 3 hours doing this thing? And if I think like, no, and that just means I'd be working too many late nights, then I say, well, I guess I don't really need to do it. So I tend to save those types of the more complex stuff for the bigger stuff that I really care about.
Yeah,
the most like
file
retro
it
episodes.
away, like I guess like shot ideals or something.
And yeah, so it's just kind of scaling up and down based on deadlines, knowing how long it's going to take, and then just making choices based on that. Right. So I'll never, if I really have to get something done by a day, then there's going to be things I don't do that I might have wanted to do, but I just have to say, no, I can't do it. I don't have time. I won't be able to finish it if I do that thing. And that's kind of really the secret to it, just knowing that, really.
And you got to realize, when you're turning something around, like nobody's going to know that you didn't do something.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess that's what it comes down to.
And so, sometimes I spend time on fun things like that stupid introduction I did for GoldenEye video, where I did spend probably an extra hour or so just working on that because I thought it was fun.
Yeah.
Right. And it's pleasing to do that sometimes, but you can't. But people enjoyed that. But if I hadn't done it because of time constraints, nobody would have cared. They wouldn't have known. Right. And that's perfectly fine. So it's really just I scale up and do more interesting things for certain projects and. Keep it in check based on, the timings for the normal stuff. It usually works okay. Those retro episodes, though, when I really get into them, they can get pretty rough at the end in terms of just getting it done.
Yeah. Oh,
so,
yeah. I mean, it's like that. You see that finish line, and you know that you need to you're gonna have to spend a long day or long weekend doing it, because
actually the biggest problem especially when getting into the episodes like I mentioned that PS3 1080p video, that was like 3.5 hours long, and and as you guys would know, when the episode gets over a certain length, it becomes really hard to keep it all in your head. Because like one of the things I do a lot is I keep rewatching parts of the video, especially the beginning. And every time I do it, I end up polishing it up a little bit more and adding stuff to it. And I do more of that when I have more time. But for those retro episodes, you know, I care a lot about them. But once they get to be hours long, it becomes really tough to do that, right? Like you think, well, I'm just going to watch this chunk and try to polish it up. That could literally cost you 2 or 3 hours of time just rewatching it and doing stuff to it, right? Which is not feasible. So it's
and nobody's gonna know. Nobody knows.
Nobody would know
that you like tidied it up a little bit, or you like that's. I think that's something that I've struggled with more is that I got to a point where I started like recording my voiceover directly to the timeline, and I said, "Oh, I can tweak this. I can go back and re-record this bit and change the way that I say something." Which is it's nice if I want to like change, you know, a lot, but sometimes I'm like, "Oh, I don't really like how I say this. I'm going to change it." And then it just becomes, you know, you spend an entire day doing nothing of any significance. That's
important. So that's another thing I've always done that seems to be different from what a lot of people do, from what I can tell anyway, is I always script and film and record in chunks. Yeah. Where it's like, all right, I've written the first 5 minutes of this video. Let me go ahead and film myself doing the whole thing, and I'm going to edit up that first 5 minutes and make it really good.
That's what
but
I
have
do.
Nothing else beyond that. And then it's like, all right.
I do the exact same thing. Oh yeah. I can't. I'm not going to write. I'm not going to write and record an entire
good. See, that's
once.
What a lot of people I've talked to are like, wow, that's what you do? And they seem surprised. And I'm like, that seems so obvious. Like, especially because it gives you this like break, right? You write for X amount of time and you're like, okay, if I keep writing, the writing is going to be less good, or I'm just going to be annoyed because I don't feel like continuing to write. And then by taking a break, you're getting a lot of stuff done. And I also find that editing the early parts of the video helps set the tone and like give you that energy to keep going. Like once you have a visual of like what it's going to look like, then you're like, oh, okay, I can build on this. And it makes it easier to write the rest.
That's what I think. It's like when you get a little piece of it even sort of done in rough draft form, it's like it gives you motivation because you're like, oh, it's coming together. I like this. And then go to the next part. I think if you got stuck just writing the whole thing and then recording the voiceover for the whole thing, you'd get sort of bogged down, you know, because you've done all this work and you don't really have anything to show for it. Yeah.
And I've now built my setup so that I can film myself in this position, standing or sitting. But like, I used to have an issue where it's like I would record on camera stuff with a different mic standing in a different part of the room. And then if I needed to make changes or add stuff in, it was actually a pain because I would usually record with a different mic or not be sitting in the right spot. And then it would sound different. You could tell one was on cam and one was not. But since I stand in the same place now, very easy to get pickup shots. Even if I just do the voice, I just stand where I did the filming and speak into the mic, and it usually sounds basically the same. And it's really easy to make changes and fixes that way. That's been just finding ways to optimize the workflow. I think you guys have done this kind of stuff as well. Just getting all the hardware in place, all the gear ready in a way that it's easy enough to just like do the stuff you need. My only real limitation is I don't have like a dedicated filming space for like B-roll shots. I just don't have the room for it in the house. So I have to pull out the slider and the camera and all that stuff and set up the lights every time I want to do it now. And that is so I basically have to dedicate a day to like B-roll shooting. And then for pickup shots, I'll just do like more simplistic shots that are easier to set up. Like maybe don't get the slider out, for instance, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the way I go on that.
I mean, I feel like for like a time management thing, I feel like there's something to be said for having like a sort of a release schedule. You know, like if you're saying, you know, I'm releasing a video every week, you know, or you're like Joe and it's like every, you know, midnight, Sunday morning, every other midnight, I'm releasing something, then at least you're giving yourself a deadline. Yeah. And I mean, I know I don't do that at all. I just release videos whenever. And I think that makes it really easy to procrastinate because like it doesn't really matter. But I think it's also hard because like, you know, I don't do this as a job, really.
Yeah,
And so I
exactly.
can't-
That's a big difference.
Yeah, but so I'm saying I can't go tell anybody, oh yeah, I can't do this thing you want me to do because I have to work on this video. Because it's like, well, no, you don't. You don't actually have to do that at all.
Exactly.
It's like, well, true. So
Yeah, I think in your kind of case that makes perfect sense, right? It's not your main job, and you don't have a release schedule. And
yeah,
that
but I'm
makes it
saying
very
I would,
easy to keep
like
pushing
to
stuff back.
Right, but I don't want to do that. That's the problem.
Oh,
I
okay.
I would like to be releasing things more often, but it's hard to when you.
I think
you have to have
the way to
priorities
do
in
that
life,
then
you know?
is to set up a release schedule that's not aggressive at first, like say
Yeah.
once a month.
Yeah.
You want to get something out, and then start figuring out like, okay, I can do this amount of stuff, even with other stuff going on, and I can get this down in a month, and then you kind of figure it out from there.
Speed it up.
And start to speed it up, find
Yeah.
a good format for it. Because when you don't have a time limit, it's very easy to just like go crazy with stuff and like keep adding things or delaying things. Say, oh, I don't want to do that part. I'll get to it sometime, and then you never want to get to it, and then it's another month later, and you're just like,
That's something I struggle with a lot, is when there's certain things that I don't want to record this specific game, or I don't want to like get this thing out to shoot it. It's like I'll keep on pushing it off, and then eventually you get to the point where you just need to turn off your brain and like, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do it right now. I'm not going to like it, and I'm just going to get it done.
I've had that
That's
happen,
good
but
though. It's good to have like an idea of like
Yeah.
maybe like the first Monday of a month or something
Yeah.
like that.
yeah.
Like use that as like your initial like release schedule.
Sometimes I'm pleasantly surprised. You talk about like, oh, I don't want to record footage for this game or whatever. I've had it be the case. Like with that PlayStation in 1995 video that I did, there was like one game that I just like. I played it for like a few minutes and I was like, oh, I don't like this game at all.
What was
it? I forgot. I can't remember what it's called. It's like
It was a loaded.
no, I love Loaded. Are you kidding me? No, it was like a first person like mech game.
is it Kilik the Blood or Kilik
No.
the DNA Imperative?
Was it a
No,
Crazy
no.
Ivan?
No, it was not
Crazy
any of those
Yvonne.
things. I can't remember the name of
Wow.
it, but it's too bad because the whole point was that when I finally sat down and played it, I was like, "Whoa, this is actually a really fun game." It's just like it takes a little bit of time to get into it, So
Yeah.
because I had even already written a little segment, because they're not reviews, they're just little showcases. Here's what this game's all about, and I'd kind of written that, being like, "Yeah, this game blows." I didn't say that, but I was just like, I thought this game was wholly uninteresting, but because I waited until the end so that I had nothing else to even do, I'm like, well, I can kind of focus on this game a little bit, and I was completely wrong about the game.
So you can go back and rewrite it.
So
I
that's
had
actually-
to, yeah.
It's interesting talk. So I think for our videos, all of us, we always film and record footage for that video, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes reuse B-roll or whatever, but I've noticed that some YouTube channels that do retro stuff, I won't name them, but they rely almost exclusively on clips from other channels.
Yes.
And they put here's the source at the bottom. But the problem that creates is that it means that all the footage winds up looking really uneven,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? And you have all different video qualities throughout the video, different aspect ratios. Sometimes the frame rate's different. Sometimes it's not recorded at the right frame rate.
Sometimes
All this
it's
stuff, and-
filtered, sometimes it's not.
Right. Sometimes it's filtered, sometimes it's not. You just end up with this crazy inconsistency and just lack of authenticity. And then for some reason, like, I understand why people would do that. Not everybody has all of the stuff set up, but it just, I don't know. That's something that always irked me a little bit because it kind of
Well, it irks me a lot, actually.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
There's nothing a little bit about it. It's
Well,
not
you-
the main. It's not the main reason, but it's one of the reasons I use those overlays. Is like it makes it really difficult to lift my game. I
Yeah.
mean, that's not why. So I shouldn't even say it's one of the reasons. It's a nice side effect of me using those overlays.
yeah.
Is if somebody steals my footage, it's going to be super obvious, and it's
Yeah.
going to make their video look weird because you're going to
Yeah.
have some footage with this overlay and others that don't. I
I'm
also
not
just
too
think
worried,
it looks better
worried
with the
about that
overlay, so.
myself because with the way I edit the videos, it's changing clips enough where I feel like it's tough to just lift raw footage from it.
It'd
Yeah.
take
It would
more
be-
time to find,
Right.
like, things that you want to show specifically, like in other
But then
people's
there's like
footage.
the frame rate graph stuff, and it's like,
Yeah.
you know what? If somebody wants to grab clips of the frame rate stuff, And I've had people ask me like, "Hey, can I use some clips of this stuff?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no problem. I don't care that much."
What you should do is just befriend a guy who has like a gigantic NAS in his house that you can FTP to, who just has lots of gameplay footage on it. Yeah, that's what I did.
That is the way.
Yeah,
gigantic NAS is the future.
yeah.
That stuff, that is something I only started, like, Coury really kicked it into high gear last year, I guess it feels like, where it was like, I actually started to use it a few times, and it is actually super useful for, like, if you mention a game and you've got, like, literally, like, you need, like, a 5-second clip, right? And you're like, oh, you don't want to set up all the capture stuff just for 5 seconds of something. Going to the NAS is such a huge time saver. That is actually a case where I would use footage from there. And I also trust that the footage on there is of good quality as well, which is really important. It's not the inconsistent stuff, right?
Right.
I love this idea of building like a repository of clips that are all done in a consistent fashion at a certain level of quality. That is actually very cool.
Yeah, it saves time for sure.
We could be like the Getty Images of gameplay footage. Yeah. I feel so bad I can't remember the name of that game. That's driving me nuts, but I'm not going to look it up for.
Was it Disruptor?
No.
Disruptor's awesome, dude. If I look at my PlayStation games over there.
Would have been a long box game.
Yeah.
Is it PO'd?
No.
I like PO'd.
Because I did that sort of like post game or post whatever video later on my side channel, and there was a big article about it in the magazine I was reading, and I was talking about how much I liked that game, and it was like a perfect like rainy day game. It's a really cool game. You're in like a mech, and it's first person perspective. You have like 3 different modes the mech can be in. And you're inside like the space station, and it's almost got like a survival horror aspect to it.
I mean, that sounds like Kill Leak the Blood.
Yes, but it
sounds a lot. Not because Kill Leak doesn't have those.
And that was a
modes.
launch. That was a launch game. So that was a launch
game. Yeah.
Yeah. This was a different.
God, it's like I got it in my head too of what it could be.
I need to look this up afterward, but not for the show.
Well, I'll look it up when we stop recording. I'll look it up real quick. But I'm not going to break. I'm not going to break the rules, and then I'll tell everybody else at the beginning of the next episode so that they don't get driven crazy.
Exactly.
We should probably start wrapping up, though.
Yeah.
We should. Yes. Speaking of time limits, so you've been listening to episode 18, the barely legal episode of. Oh, God. Here's my question for you. Our guest has been John Linneman from Digital Foundry. And if you like to take a minute and tell people where to find you, you can. Or if you don't want to, we won't take it personally.
I mean, just find me go to digitalfoundry.net. Check out our YouTube channel. Should be easy to find. We're there. We do stuff. Some people like this stuff. Some people get mad about it. It is what it is, but it's there.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right.
Yeah. We always end the shows as awkwardly as possible. So there's
we're really
we don't
good.
have like a sign off.
I can stop recording right now.
Yes.
You could if you wanted to. I'm probably going to stop in a minute. So everybody out there, have a good week, and happy President's Day if you're in the United States, and
I'm not
happy going to work while some of us get to stay home day if you're not. So there you go.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.